I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Commercial Coffee Series by ARIA. I'm Ritu Rani. I'm your National Commercial Chair, and we have a very special guest speaker, Stephanie from ICSC, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. But I wanted to get a few housekeeping things taken care of before we start. It's still not too late to apply for the commercial scholarship. This is a scholarship that we're offering. It's a $1,500 scholarship to take an ICSC class, and it's open to any ARIA member. So it's a really good benefit if you are looking to either get into commercial real estate, or if you are in commercial real estate and you'd like to learn more about a specific area. So that scholarship is open. Applications, we're taking them until February 28th, and the application is on the website. If you cannot find it or you have any questions, please feel free to email me directly. It's ritu@riturani.com or my usual ritu305@gmail. Either one will work. The other thing is our next commercial call we're having on March 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. And this one will be open to everyone in the ARIA community. Usually we just have it with our small commercial, our commercial committee, but this one is open to all of you if you'd like to join. So thank you, Jazz, for putting the link to the application in the chat box. So those are my two housekeeping announcements. And without further ado, let's introduce Stephanie Cegielski. And she is a rock star in her own right, but she also works for an organization that is very important for ARIA Commercial. Stephanie is the Vice President of Public Relations for ICSC. She serves as the primary spokesperson discussing how retail real estate builds communities, fuels the economy, and inspires innovation. She is a graduate of the University of Denver Strum College of Law, and she's worked in both the public and private sectors. Stephanie taught at NYU Graduate School of Professional Studies, and she served a governor, an attorney general, and 3 secretaries of state. Prior to entering the public sector, she's worked in corporate finance, specializing in bankruptcy. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank
And
you.
How are you doing today?
It's 11 months into a pandemic. I think I finally hit my stride.
Good, good. Well, you have quite a resume. One thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about you before I talk about ICSC, and I hope you brought your coffee. I know it's a little later for us on the East Coast, but I wanted to ask you what did you like better? Did you like working in the private sector or the public sector? I mean, it's pretty impressive.
They both offer very different experiences. I love public policy. I'm really fortunate because I still get to support our public policy team at ICSC, so I still get to do some of that and work with the state governments and the federal government. So that's really where my passion is. I think that's one of the reasons I went to law school, and so I'm just fortunate I get to talk for a living and do policy.
Yay. Well, that's really exciting. So Stephanie works for ICSC, and for those of you who don't know, ICSC is just a wealth of knowledge, and they are, one of our true partners. And I think this partnership that we have with them, it's critical to diversity and inclusion, making sure that we have, all voices heard of different backgrounds. And, through this partnership, we do offer our ARIA members a discounted ICSC membership of $125. That's down from their normal $800. So, that's a huge benefit to becoming a member of ARIA, and also then translating into a member of ICSC, especially if you want to know anything about retail, because they do amazing conferences. They have a ton of industry knowledge and reports, and this is the one that we're going to be doing today. And of course, I've got the Zoom background, so you can't see it, but it's the impact of COVID-19 on the evolving use of retail real estate. And I mean, this has taken Stephanie's team months to put together. It's a really in-depth report. It's a members only report, and she is kind enough to be sharing it with um, our commercial base. So Stephanie, is there anything you want to add just about ICSC, what you guys do overall, and our relationship, ARIA and ICSC?
No, I mean, I think, we at ICSC, a couple of things, we really focus on, the real estate side of things as well as the retail side, and really advancing the industry and uh, trying to really communicate the importance of it to communities. But even more, one of the things that we, and like so many others, are really focused on is our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And with our Launch Academy that we've just implemented to really increase the DE&I, our DE&I presence. And we are definitely an industry that is very male and very white.
Yes.
And we are trying actively to change that. And our foundation team and Jasmine Johnson, our diversity director, are working very hard to do that and doing some really incredibly wonderful things in that realm right now. So I'm proud to be a part of this team.
Well, thank you. And we definitely appreciate, all the partnership, all the speakers that you've helped us with, all our conventions. And I know some of our ARIA team has spoken at your events. So, I hope to continue that relationship. So if anyone's interested in joining ICSC, you can contact me for that discounted membership, or you can write directly to Jasmine. It's jjohnson@icsc.com. So that's really amazing. And I want to leave time to talk about this report that Stephanie's team has been working so diligently on for months. So the impact of COVID-19 on the evolving use of retail real estate. Stephanie, tell me, and for those of you who joined late, the link is in the chat box for you to download if you want a copy of it. What was the most interesting thing that you found once you finished the report? Like the one thing that really stands out most?
So I'll start by saying this has been a process. We started this actually back in August. We started talking about this, which was still, not early in the pandemic, but we were just still getting situated into it. And we started collecting the data in October. And so we have spent probably 6 months working on this. And I think what was most interesting is even in October, the optimism that both retailers and commercial real estate executives had for the next, 6 to 12 to 24 months. Even though this is an industry that has been incredibly impacted by the pandemic.
Let me ask you, so I read through the whole report, and I know you talk a lot about the small businesses versus the larger businesses, or the smaller retail centers versus the larger retail centers. So, from that perspective, can you tell me some of the changes that both of those different groups had to make, and what of those changes are going to be continuing, do you see, after post-pandemic life?
Sure. I mean, the number one thing that we saw, which is the number one thing that consumers have asked for, is health and safety protocols. So whether it was government mandated or not, you did see the increase in cleaning, the increase in sanitization. You saw more availability of hand sanitizer once we got through that initial
shortage of
sanitizer
and Lysol.
Yes. And who would have thought we would have had some of the shortages that we had at the beginning? And really for retailers, it was just sort of having to rethink their business plan, because to your point, the smaller retailers went through something different than the larger retailers. And most of those larger retailers were deemed essential, so they got to stay open, and the smaller ones didn't. And so they had to quickly shift to, if they didn't have a good online and in-store strategy, they were implementing one very quickly. And so what you really saw was, outside of the health and safety, is how do we still serve the customer in a way that we can do so if we can't open our doors? And what you just sort of naturally saw was the automatic dedication of parking spaces or curbside space. to be able to pick up items and, you know, that kind of personal shopping experience that you could do online and then go pick it up, whether you were doing so out of health and safety or just out of the need because the retailer was closed.
So this click and collect method, do you think it has been more prolific for the smaller shops or for the bigger shops?
For everybody.
Everybody.
So what we saw pre-pandemic was that about 8 or 9% of sales each month were going to online, whether that was click and collect or ship home. It was about 8%. In May at its peak, it was 29% of those sales were happening online, and it remains throughout the year at about 20% or greater.
Mm.
So what really happened is just people had to use it.
Right.
They had to, and so it was the smaller retailers sort of quickly implemented things, whether it was just as something as simple as putting up a website so people could shop products and call the store and make a purchase, or it was your Target or Walmart where you could actually place your entire order online and then go pick it up.
And this whole role of technology and all of this, as you were saying, like people were scrambling to put in a tech platform if they didn't have one, or I'm sure the bigger companies put a lot of money into their infrastructure of building their tech. What role do you see technology playing going forward? Do you think this click and collect it's here to stay and it's going to continue to grow, or is it, are people, it's here to stay, but people aren't going to use it that much? And what other things in technology do you see happening down the road?
There's a lot. There's really a lot. So I think when you look at click and collect, it is here to stay. It was here to stay before the pandemic, but it really, if people weren't familiar with it pre-pandemic, they most definitely are now. And so retailers doing that, 34% of consumers have used click and collect once a month, every month through the pandemic. So that's a third of consumers are repeatedly using click and collect. So retailers are expecting that is going to continue. I expect it'll continue. I don't think it'll continue at the levels of the pandemic. It will plateau off, but it will definitely it's going to have to be a part of everybody's business plan, whether you're the property owner and you've got to make space for that, or you're the retailer and you have to figure out how to accommodate it. We know that going forward, the investment in that digital infrastructure is going to be key, and they're looking at it. The difference is how small retailers and large retailers are approaching it. But there are some commonalities between website development and making sure that people can purchase online, and shipping. Shipping has become a significant issue in the pandemic. And how they're managing that. So the digital infrastructure will definitely continue to be a significant investment, and retailers constantly have to look at all of those channels and how they're investing in them. But I would add too that it's not just how the consumer makes their purchase. It's how they experience it in the store as well. So some of that digital investment will come to the store. So if you look at an Ulta Beauty or a Sephora, you can't go in there anymore and try on makeup, because of COVID. And so they're trying to figure out how to do that. And as whether it's trying on clothes or it's trying on makeup, you want to see how it looks on you before you make that purchase. And so some of those dollars will go to how to do that digitally, so that people can have an experience without touching the product.
So that's going to be an in-store experience, or do you see that happening both in-store and online at home, that you can see how that lipstick looks or that new dress looks, or those shoes, whatever it is, in the comfort of your own home? Or
it'll be both. They're going to have to figure out how to integrate that in the online and the in-person experience. What's always amazing to me is actually the dollars of cosmetic sales that happen online, because I'm not that person. I don't just buy it blindly. but I mean, they were already making some of those, but yes, that is going to have to be an online and an in-store experience. How that gets implemented will be different. You can stand in front of a specialized mirror in a store, but you might not be able to do at home.
Right.
So, there will be a lot of smart minds working on that and how to make that happen.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now, I want to go back to the click and collect. Are there certain areas of retail where you see it happening more, like groceries, or is it, because I mean, I know personally, I love the click and collect with the groceries now because it saves me so much time. It's just like reorder down the check everything, and then you just go on the way to running another errand, and you come back, you pop open your trunk, and same with Target. That's another retailer that just for essentials, because they bring it right out to your car and you don't get lost in the maze of the store.
Right.
So
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of really interesting things that have happened. One is kind of the whole redesign at the front of the store to accommodate click and collect, some of which was happening again pre-pandemic, but really had to be a consideration during the pandemic. And okay, that's fine. We're not even going to or we're not going to worry as much about the inside of the store because we're going to go ahead and bring it to your car and have everything completely contactless, which goes back to the health and safety concerns, which is
of
nice.
course.
And I'm with you. I don't like grocery shopping normally. So yeah, to be able to go and say, here's what I bought the last 2 months, let me just reorder all of that. Grocery has, for many reasons, had an incredible 2020. And the grocery stores had to scramble the fastest because most of the grocery chains didn't have any sort of kind of online pickup option.
Right.
So they scrambled to kind of implement those, and there was, some fits and starts, but they did it well. And you saw grocery stores, Kroger had a location in Cincinnati that was dark, and they turned it into a distribution center essentially, so that they could handle the sheer volume of those orders.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely grocery, and like the discount department stores like Target and Walmart, were the most successful, if you will, during that period of time, because that's where people were able to shop, whether online or in person.
So you mentioned the distribution center, that the Kroger made, one of their stores a distribution center. And I know the distribution is not, I mean, it's part of retail, but that's warehousing. That's another area. But do you see that space is going to cannibalize some of the retail space? Like let's go a little more into the commercial real estate side, like just as far as sales go and what's going to happen.
So
what do you think?
It's interesting. I do think there is going to be square footage that's going to be lost from product to customer to convenience. And that's really for a couple of reasons. One, we've already seen, we saw some of it early on, even in the essential retailers, because what they had to do is they had to figure out how to create more floor space to allow for social distancing.
Right.
So they had to move product off the floor, which is not what any retailer really wants to do.
Of course.
To allow for social distancing. From the property perspective, you have to figure out that parking logistically, even the space outside the stores if people had to line up. So there is some concern there, but really retailers kind of, without realizing it, we're able to figure out how to handle that in a non-pandemic world by doing it in the pandemic world. Because for a lot of those retailers, if their store was closed, they could just pull product directly from the store and ship it or have it delivered in that local marketplace.
Right.
So they sort of figured out that logistics on the fly while they actually had a little bit of time to do so, which could ultimately help with some of the last mile problems that they're always trying to solve for. And do I open up another distribution center in a market so that I can meet the consumer needs, or will my store be okay to do that? And so what you may actually see less volume of product on the floor, still the variety of product, but less volume as they figure out if they're going to use more kind of a back room space for fulfilling orders, or whether that be in store or online.
And do you see that like throughout retail, like different sectors of retail, whether it be groceries or Sephora or Target or, high-end luxury boutique?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the sector. So, ultimately, grocery may go back to a low online, um, more in store. And I've seen it in my own grocery store throughout the pandemic, where at one period of time, if I went in there, it was me and all the grocery workers doing the online order shopping.
Yeah.
I've seen more and more people come back to that. Um, but for some of the other retailers that maybe you don't frequent as often, like
Hmm.
apparel or cosmetics, there will be a balance, and that goes to the just trying to figure out each of their markets, because each market is going to behave differently. So what do those people want? Which is really what has to happen at the property or the retail level now or pre-pandemic,
Right,
to
right.
figure out how to support that community. So it's going to really depend on what that market looks like. I know for like Ulta, they have seen just as much online sales as in-store sales in some of their markets, um, but not in others.
So are you saying that before, for Ulta, for example, before the pandemic, their online was lower than their in-store, and
Yeah,
now they're on par
they're on par or above. So like
or
Target
above?
and
Okay.
Walmart actually saw like 60% of their sales were coming from online.
Hmm.
Um, and some of it has to do with just people were very deliberate about going out and shopping. They would do it less often, so their basket sizes in store might be bigger, but if they did it
Yes.
online, they were more comfortable driving once a week. But yes, we have seen those two level out. Again, I think what will ultimately happen is those in-store sales will exceed the online. But one of the things that we do know is that over 60% of people who make an online purchase, who use click and collect and pick it up in store, make
Right.
another purchase. So while they're there, so it's really beneficial for retailers to be able to offer that service in a convenient way, because it will likely lead to another sale for them.
Right. So let's talk about that, having the other sale, the repeat business, and trying to grow that, your sales volume. So when you're in a store, there are inevitably a lot of impulse purchases, whether you are in a grocery store and you see another type of sour cream, or you're in Target and they have, whatever it is by the aisles, or you're just walking through stuff you didn't intend on purchasing. Now online, you're a little more deliberate. I mean, people don't have hours to just sit there and browse, or you don't think of things. So how how is the advertising strategy changing, or where are the advertising dollars going to go to in the future to try and you capture some of that, impulse purchase, so to speak? And what do you see the retailers doing to try and promote that impulse purchase? Because it's a lot harder. I mean, I see on Amazon, they recommend, oh, people frequently bought this, and this. Do you want to add all of these? I don't know. Like, what do you see happening down the road as the level of online is increasing?
Well, that's another place where the digital dollars are going, or where the digital infrastructure dollars are going to go. They're going to focus on some of those marketing efforts. They're likely to do some digital advertising in the store. We all get those targeted ads online. My daughter recently needed a new ski helmet, and suddenly she's at school in Colorado. I'm here on the East Coast, and yet
Right, right.
on my homepage there was an Amazon ski ad for Amazon and a ski helmet. Um, so they're going to really kind of focus on those types of things and tap into those behaviors. And they're going to be a little bit more strategic about it than they might have been in the past, knowing that this online sector is going to remain important to consumers.
Hmm. So, in the next, let's say, 2 years, do you see online being more predominant then, and then than going into the store, or?
I don't. Again, I think it'll level off at some point, likely this year, likely toward the end of the year, as we continue through vaccination efforts, people being able to kind of get back into a normal groove of things and feel comfortable and safe going out. So I really think that the online is going to be there always because there are advantages to it. There are conveniences to it.
Right.
But the consumer is always going to want as many options as possible. So whether that's, I don't really have time to go buy, the hairspray that I need, but I'll just order it because I can run in and get it. It's I don't see that going away, but I do see that right now there's a lot of pent up demand for people to be out.
Yes.
So I think we will
Well, it
definitely
depends on what state you're in, but yeah.
Well, it does depend on what state you're in. Here in the Northeast, we've been home for 10 or 11 months, so we're kind of ready.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. I am looking at that as well, and we do have a couple of more minutes here. Stephanie, is there anything else that you want to share from the report and all the work that went into it? Like any other key insights?
It's like I started with, I think the optimism, we see more optimism from the landlord, the commercial side, than we do from the retailer side. A lot of that has to do with the way that landlords curate their tenant mix. So they have the advantage of having, food and beverage, and while that has been hit really hard, they have it, and the services and the retailers. So they're a little bit more optimistic that their sales per square foot is going to come back faster than retailers think that their in-store sales are going to come back. But both of them, are looking at 12 to 24 months being at pre-pandemic levels. Economists are saying that, the IMF is saying they're anticipating 6% growth in by the end of the year. So that's really encouraging.
Yes.
It was interesting when you think about government mandates, as you kind of said, depends on what state you're in. Large retailers faced a lot of challenges that I hadn't really thought about going in, that they had government mandates in 50 states that were not all the same. And some of those localities had different mandates. So the way they had to implement some of their safety measures wasn't necessarily a one size fits all. But for me, it's great to see that there's been this strong partnership between landlords and retailers or tenants during this to really make sure that it was a joint effort and everybody came out of this as well as they could.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, so there are different things between the different states. I have Aziz asking, what's happening? What about Canada?
Canada's very much in a similar situation. And it's gonna take some time. It's a little bit, the regulations are different, but a lot of places it depended on what province you were in. So as to what was going on, I think it's human behavior to and desire to be social and to go out. So I think some of that will come back. It's just the pace at which it does. This is not like we had a hurricane in the Southeast. This is a global event that involved everybody. So I think there's that kind of willingness to make sure that the global economy doesn't collapse.
Right. And speaking of global, one last question from Watsuko. She wants to know your view on investors from abroad.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I think it's just sort of going to depend. We haven't seen a whole lot of anything going on. So in the last year, I think that there are going to be some great opportunities going forward, depending on where you're looking to invest and what you're looking to invest in. From a landlord side, obviously rents are going to be lower because demand has shifted as retailers or tenants have gone out of business or whatnot. So there's probably some opportunity there, but I do think that it is still worth investing in retail, in the commercial properties because it will come back. It's just like any investment. It's you do your due diligence and figure out where it's best to make those investments happen.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
and for ICSC sharing the report. Again, the link is over there. And if anyone wants to become a member, please reach out to me or Jasmine and the Commercial Scholarship as well. And we will see you next month. Thanks so much.